Well, guys, what a weekend of Spa. And let's get straight into talking about the weekend. I've been thinking about it for me as a McLaren fan, I'm always thinking when this type of weekend happens, yes, Piastri wins, some McLaren won too. It's a good weekend. But, is it actually? Because on the other side of things, as if you were a non-McLaren fan, you could be like, man, this weekend was shit. Completely shit. And I think that's fully valid, right? So let's dig into it. The championship standings, Piastri extends his lead from Norris back up to 16 points. So he got the second place in the sprint, and then obviously getting over Norris in the main race garnered him 8 points. So he had an 8 points lead coming into the weekend, extended it by another 8. And Verstappen, everything else sort of stayed put. I mean, Hamilton with a great comeback drive, which we'll discuss. Leclerc bagged some good points, which was good for him. In the constructors kick Sauber. Now, they didn't get closer to Williams because they had a good weekend. But that RB battle between Sauber and RB is heating up a bit. I feel like RB has a bit more form, bit more momentum, but Sauber's got the 5-point difference. So it's a good battle there. It's always good to see what's going on in the constructors, because we got a really good midfield battle going on this year. And yeah, let's move on straight into the main race. We're going to talk about the main race first, then at the end we'll go into the sprint weekend for the sprint race and stuff like that. So my race rating, I've got down here a 7 out of 10, but upon further pondering, I'm going to change it to a 6. And that was that thought I was telling you about at the start, right? A 6 because as a McLaren, but I've got Piastri lenses on when I say a 7, or a McLaren lens when I say a 7. But as a neutral, objective, follower, it's probably more like a 6, because there was a lot of frustration, I guess, with the rain delay, and there wasn't really a lot of overtaking. I mean, we did have a couple of great overtakes at the end of the Camel Straight, but that was sort of it. I mean, all the important overtakes were done on lap 1 in terms of race outcomes, and then in the pit lane, really, because of the strategy. Although that was something that I thought was a good thing of the race. We had a bit of variance in the strategy, but we didn't get to really see how those tyres played out. The rain delay was a bit frustrating. I mean, for me, I was getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning the next day, right? So the race starts at I was getting up at 5:30 in the morning the next day. The race starts at 11 p.m. in Oz. I was like, damn, if this gets delayed, I can't watch this. I got to watch it in the morning. And that's exactly what ended up happening. As soon as I was tired, it was 11. It was 11:15. They do the formation lap. Nope. Red flag. An hour and 20 later, I couldn't have stayed up for that. There's no way. And then we saw that there was some negative comments from the drivers that felt like the race should have got going earlier. And there's been a lot of discussion about wet weather races, what's going on with the wet tire, how it's redundant now. But it's they have to have a wet weather tire there, but it's essentially unusable, because anytime the conditions permit a wet tire, the spray is too much and they can't race. So it's if it's in use, if it's wet enough to be used, there's too much spray to have the drivers out on track for safety concerns, which is totally valid. And I get the frustration on both sides, because we're well, what's the point having a red tire? But it's it's got to be there. So the wet tire's there. And then by the time that the conditions are okay to race, everyone wants to be on inters because the tyre is so much better, performs so much better. But by the time we're on inters, they dry the track out in 9 laps, like is what we saw in Spa. We had about 9 laps, and everyone was on slicks. So the tyre performs so much better that it makes these tyres redundant, these wet tyres redundant. And I don't know what the fix to that is, because we can't say, like, I mean, we heard that in Silverstone, drivers were complaining about how dangerous the conditions were. I mean, we saw the collision between Hadjar and Antonelli. I mean, you know, things like that are going to happen if we race in wet conditions like this. So at one point, we got to put the safety of the drivers up the front of the up the front of our priorities, because we just want it to be safe for them. But then on the spectacle side of things, it's garbage, because we got to wait an hour and 20 for a race to start. And yeah, I don't know what the fix is. I mean, unless we go ahead with these rain covers, but we don't even know if that's like a fix. I mean, I feel like if they were, we'd already see them implemented. So who knows, man? Who knows? It's crazy, and I don't think there's an immediate fix. And I don't think there will be for a few years. I mean, some people are also saying that with E26 cars that the spray is going to be a little bit better because of the way that the car. People are saying that the way the downforce is generated, that produces a lot of the spray through the rear diffuser. I don't know, man. So we just have to wait and see, and sort of deal with the situations that are going to happen and are going to arise from this, because it's probably going to keep happening. But yeah, the tires, I think were a good idea. Obviously in the race, it turned out to be okay. I mean, Lando going on to that C1 hard tire turned out to be an absolute banging play, because this was disappointing for me, but he made the mistakes. But if he didn't make the mistakes, he would have been a potential, like a very high chance of passing Piastri, because he was so much quicker. I mean, at the start, Piastri just broke away with those mediums. But we heard, Norris just gradually bring them in and they'll come to you. And they did. And it was crazy. And that was sort of that anticipation, which in my McLaren head was leading me to rate the race at 7 out of 10. But then again, that's a battle between two cars. So I don't think it contributes to the whole spectacle. Definitely is part of it, but not the whole spectacle. So let's talk predictions. I was completely off this weekend, as per. Norris got the pole. Piastri did get the win. So I was right about the win, which I was happy about. But George Russell and the Mercedes were a bit nowhere. So we got that wrong. We got Hadjar for class drive, which was wrong. He had a bit of a technical issue, so give myself a break, but he wasn't the class drive. Run wide was Albon. Albon had a class drive, so completely way off there. My actual prediction, that my actual outcomes were probably class drive had to go to Hamilton, because he had a beastly drive up to 7th and a master stroke strategy call by Ferrari for once. They got him on the slicks at the perfect chance, the perfect opportunity. Soon as that track hit the crossover point, bang, he was on slicks and he was making up positions. So it was phenomenal strategy call by the Ferrari pit crew there. And the run wide, for me, I said Tsunoda. I mean, he did get a bit like, it was team affected, but I think Tsunoda probably, he was running in the points, and I was like, yeah, Tsunoda's gonna get up. He's gonna score some points this weekend. But nah, he got dogged, and he just, I don't know. It's like he's not confident enough to make up positions in this car. So, I mean, it proved to be a hard track to pass on anyway. But Tsunoda, team affected, but I still think he gets run wide for me personally. So that was the race. Let's move on to, let's go team by team now. McLaren. So, as I said before, Lando got onto the right tyres at the right time, but he had some costly, costly mistakes in the end. We saw him lock up, we saw him run wide, and that probably impacted him at the end. I mean, he was probably a chance at winning the race, and I mean, it rubbed us a little bit of a good battle towards the end because he was on the faster tyre, he was hunting, and I was like, at one point on like lap 30, I was like, man, he's cooked. Piastri's cooked. Like, Lando is just going to have so much more pace at the end. But it showed that Piastri, he's better at time management now, so he's done well. And all the other drivers did it as well. So, and that's what I was talking about the tyres before. That sort of the C1, C3, C4 that we had, the wet weather sort of robbed us of seeing what that looked like. Although it ended up being everyone just did the mediums right to the end. So we don't know what it would have looked like in a full dry race. So I hope that they can do something like that again, mix it up like that again, and we can see what that looks like in a full dry race setting, because I'm very interested to see how that will play out. Because, yeah, it was a good, unexpected strategy call for Norris, and it almost paid off. So Piastri, man, he was a gun all weekend. He was quickest in practice, smashed qualifying into the sprint. Almost half a second between him and the next car was unbelievable. So he had a ripping weekend, ripping drive. Yes, he let that lap one overtake go to Verstappen, but I feel like he didn't really have it wasn't worth it to put up a fight in that sort of scenario over like a point or two. So, I think he did the right thing there just by not fighting too hard, not making any desperate lunges. Verstappen always was going to have the faster car in the straight line. And yeah, but then he made it back in the main race, didn't qualify first, got Norris. Even though Norris had a bit of a battery problem, supposedly, he did the job on Norris and didn't look back. So awesome stuff there from Piastri. The Ferraris, Leclerc with an absolute banging race, in my opinion. He defended Verstappen. You could see he got that third place, and he was like, yeah, I'm getting a podium. Fucking no matter what, I'm getting a podium. And he defended the whole race, and he held up Verstappen, and he did a great job of that. And Verstappen was probably the faster car, but as we know in F1 nowadays, you can hold back a faster car with these with the turbulent air and the loss of downforce in these corners, especially at Spa. You can hold back a faster car, and Leclerc did that, and he did a phenomenal job. So Verstappen, we know, had a bit of a high downforce setup in the Sunday race as opposed to the Saturday race, which didn't allow him to get a good run. So simple as that. Awesome stuff from Leclerc. Awesome stuff from Hamilton. As I said earlier, great drive from him getting into the points, and they made a beautiful call. Ferrari. So good to see. It's always good to see that. Mercedes, a little bit in no man's land, I said. They had to use different setups to get up the order, get George Russell up the order in qualifying, and Kimi Antonelli was sort of nowhere. He didn't show any signs of moving up the order, and he didn't qualify well either. And I feel like in this midfield battle that's so competitive, all the midfield cars are faster. So even if you're in like a Merc, like Antonelli or Sonoda, it's so much harder to pass these midfield cars because they're so much better than what they were probably 2-3 years ago. Which is good because we get these guys scoring points. I mean, heaps of guys scoring points. So it's great to see. Red Bull land, Verstappen, another good weekend, just consistent. He's just a freak driver. I mean, he's so good. He did a great job in the sprint, overtaking Piastri, getting that win, did everything he could do, and he did everything he could have done in the main race as well, but just couldn't overtake Leclerc. So well done by him. Williams, solid points for Albon on race day, solid points for Sainz on sprint day. It was so weird. They just switched around. Sainz was a beast earlier in the weekend. Then, like I said, if you qualify down the order in this midfield battle, there's just no way of making it up. I mean, Sainz was a car that scored top 6 in the sprint. But then in the main race, he didn't qualify well, cooked him. Albon, other way around, made him get a good result. So it's just crazy, but good job by Williams. They just need to get both cars consistently up there. But I feel like it's a good weekend for them. They've been struggling a fair bit, and to scrap 2 top 6 positions, regardless of being a sprint and being a main race, I think it's just like great for them, and it's good for their momentum going into Hungary. So, Sauber, good race car. They came on later in the weekend as opposed to Haas. Bortoletto with a banging drive to scrap points. Hulk not as good, but he was up there. But Bortoletto would really proved himself and had a really good race day. So it was awesome by him. Alpine, look, Gasly, he is scrapping in a shit car and he's doing well to score points. I mean, to get a point out of that, incredible job. I mean, Colapinto, he's a bit nowhere, which is unfortunate. He needs to pick it up because he's starting to struggle. And it's starting to show. And Gasly's just running laps around him. So we need him to get up the order. Aston, very weird weekend for them. They were trash on the Sundays. They were really good in practice, and qualifying in the sprint, they were actually really good. Where they finished in the sprint, they finished poorly in the sprint, but where did they qualify in the sprint? Sprint grid. Okay, no, they didn't end up qualifying good in the sprint. Why did I think they did? They were still 14th and 15th. But in practice, let's say the practice, they were like top 10. They were like top 10 in the practice. Practice 1. Yeah, 8th and 9th in practice. I was like, oh yeah, Aston's on here. They were the first of the midfield team in practice. And I was like, yeah, hey, here we go. And they just fell off. I don't know. They were just crap. I don't know what happened. Fernando was just terrible. Very unlike him. And yeah, they were just nowhere. So not a good weekend for them. And they need to pick it up as well, honestly. Racing Bulls. Now, Hadjar, as I said, I think he had a bit of a technical issue. But Lawson, man, Lawson is saving them. In the main race. Lawson gets points, and he did a great job. So he's carrying him right now, and he's catching up to Hadjar in the standings. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, Racing Bulls have 2 good young guys at the stable there in the second team. Let them develop, man. Don't put them into the Red Bull. And just let them develop, let them build up their confidence, their racecraft in a space where they can, fail a little bit. So they're in a good place. They're in a really good place. I like where they're at, and they just got to keep pushing for points. And I think they're a decent team. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go for the second half of the season. And that is Haas. Similar to Aston, man. Early in the weekend, good. They were good earlier in the weekend. In the sprint, they score points in the sprint. Yeah. 5th and 7th in the sprint. I don't know what happened to them. In the race, they just had no pace whatsoever. I mean, they qualified average. Behrman was better, but still, they just went a bit nowhere. But they had a great performance in the sprint. I feel like they went a bit with more of a high-speed setup, like Verstappen. But so potentially it was just in the setup that they sort of exaggerated their performance in the sprint because it's a shorter distance. And then in the main race, they just didn't have the pace. So I don't know. But yeah, that's sort of like how it went. The sprint, I'd probably rate terribly. I mean, the sprint was like a 4 out of 10 for me. Garbage. We only had that Verstappen overtake, and then they didn't even show anything. It was just watching Piastri coming up to the back of Verstappen. And he was not going to get him. Like, you could just see. It was just that sort of race. And so it was a definite 4 out of 10 for me. So those are the main takeaways from the weekend. Wow. We got Hungary next. Last year, Piastri won there. So what's going to happen next? I don't know. Can we get a good race? Who's the real lookouts now? I feel like we're just looking at Piastri, Norris, and now it's like, yeah, who's good in the midfield? Because the midfield battle is so entertaining. Like if you're sort of a fan of the Ferrari, Red Bull, Merc, who aren't really in that hunt for the top, I mean, forget about them. Look towards that midfield battle. Like scrap the top four off the championship. There's your championship battle right there. Can Williams hold off a surging Sauber and Racing Bulls? So it's going to be awesome. Super keen for the second half of the season, and yeah, we'll see you guys for the Hungary preview. Make sure you subscribe, comment. Let me know your thoughts on the Grand Prix. Let me know your thoughts on this wet weather racing. I mean, where do we go from here? Because how can we get these cars racing safely in the wet is the question. Anyway, guys, that's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.